Welcome to True Betrayal Stories, where secrets are exposed, lies unravel, and justice is served. If you love shocking betrayal stories and satisfying revenge, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an update. They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from someone you trust, but they don't tell you how quiet it is, how slow, how subtle. I used to think if my world ever collapsed, I'd hear it crack like thunder. But no, when I lost my wife to my best friend, the world didn't explode. It whispered. My name is Tom. I'm 33 years old and I work in IT for a mid-sized company. I've never been flashy, never the life of the party, but I've always been steady, reliable, the guy who remembers birthdays, double-checks reservations, shows up early. I've built my life around logic, structure, and loyalty. Maybe that's why it took me so long to see the signs. Jake was my best friend since college. We met in freshman year during a group project that went totally off the rails. I was the one typing up our slides at 3 a.m., and he was the guy cracking jokes about burning it all down. Somehow, we balanced each other out. He was charming, loud, a little wild. I was quiet, calculated, always thinking 2 steps ahead. He brought chaos. I brought calm. We became inseparable. Through heartbreaks, late-night coding marathons, and dumb road trips across state lines, Jake was the guy who always had my back. He once drove 4 hours in the middle of a snowstorm just because I called and said I didn't want to be alone. That kind of friendship, it sticks with you, becomes part of you. After college, we both landed jobs at the same IT firm. Different departments, but the same floor. We lived in the same apartment complex for years, shared groceries, shared rides, shared everything except toothbrushes, and, apparently, boundaries. Then came Rosie. She wasn't someone you could ignore. She worked for a marketing agency that partnered with our firm. I met her during a quarterly planning meeting where she marched into the room 5 minutes late and completely stole the spotlight. Tall, with sharp cheekbones and even sharper confidence, she didn't hesitate to challenge any idea that didn't make sense. I was captivated from the start. She had these sea glass green eyes that always looked like they were hiding something clever. Her laugh was the kind that made people turn their heads. Bold but warm, loud but real. Jake noticed her too, of course. After the meeting, we both lingered outside the elevator. Jake grinned at me and said, "If you don't ask her out, I will." I beat him to it. Our first date was coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into staying up all night on a park bench, just talking about everything. Books, music, fears, bad dates, childhood memories. It felt effortless. Within weeks, we were seeing each other every other day. She'd swing by my apartment after work. I started stocking her favorite wine in my fridge without thinking. I found excuses to leave work early just to catch her before her meetings ended. When she met Jake, I was nervous. But he was gracious, friendly, too friendly. He teased her like he always teased people he liked. Rosie matched his banter, and I remember thinking, wow, they're going to get along great. In hindsight, I should have looked closer. Jake told me that night, "She's special, man. Don't screw it up." I didn't intend to. Things moved quickly after that. Rosie and I were living together within 6 months. We'd spend weekends cooking elaborate meals we found on Pinterest, binge-watching crime documentaries, and getting into mock arguments about which dog breed we'd get when we finally bought a house. She fit into my life so seamlessly that I stopped wondering if it was too fast. She didn't just make me happy, she made everything feel easy. Jake was always around. He became part of our rhythm: Sunday brunches, board game nights, lazy afternoons with takeout and movies. Sometimes I'd come home from work and find them already deep in conversation, laughing at some inside joke I didn't quite catch. It didn't bother me, at first. Jake had a girlfriend at the time, Clarissa. She was intense, beautiful, stylish, always put together. But she didn't mesh with our group. She seemed uncomfortable with how often Jake was over. Once, she even asked me if I thought Jake relied on you guys too much. Rosie didn't like her. "She's condescending," she said. "Jake deserves better." I didn't think much of it, but I should have. A few months later, Clarissa and Jake broke up. Jake showed up at our door with bloodshot eyes and a bottle of whiskey. Rosie sat with him for hours, rubbing his back, listening while I made dinner. She never saw him, Rosie told me that night. Like really saw him. I didn't respond. She looked at me. "He's hurting, Tom. I want to help." Of course, I said. He's family. Jake started hanging out even more after that. Weeknights, weekends, random lunch drop-ins at my office. At first I was glad. He seemed better with Rosie around. She was warm to him in ways I didn't know how to be, but then I started noticing things. Like how she smiled at her phone when she got a message she didn't share with me, or how Jake's name came up in conversation more than mine did, or how she once said, "Jake's the only person who really gets that book," when I told her I didn't enjoy some novel she'd recommended. It felt small, petty, so I kept it to myself. Then came the night she asked me if I'd mind if she grabbed drinks with Jake alone. "He's been feeling low," she said, "and you've been so swamped with work." I paused. She noticed. "Tom," she said softly, "you trust me, don't you?" I nodded. "Of course." She left in a black dress I hadn't seen in months. Came back smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. She came home a little after midnight. Her hair was slightly tousled, lipstick smudged just barely. She looked surprised to see me still awake, curled up on the couch pretending to watch a show I wasn't even paying attention to. "Oh, you're still up," she said, setting her purse down carefully. Too carefully. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, keeping my eyes on the TV. She walked into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water. I watched her from the corner of my eye. Her hand was shaking slightly. "How was it?" I asked casually. She paused mid-sip. "It was fine. We just talked. He's still having a hard time, you know." I nodded. "Yeah, I get it." She hesitated. "I know it's weird, me going out alone with him like that. But you trust me, right?" The question hung in the air like fog. "I do," I said after a long pause. "I just don't trust him." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "He's been acting weird for months, distant, avoiding me, but always making time for you." She crossed her arms. "So now I can't be friends with your best friend because he broke up with his girlfriend?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying, Tom?" Her voice had sharpened. I sighed. "I don't know. Maybe I'm saying I feel like something's changed, and I don't know what it is, and I don't like it." She stood there for a moment, then softened. "Nothing's changed. Jake's hurting. I'm helping. That's it. I love you. You know that, right?" I wanted to believe her. I nodded. She came over, kissed me gently. "Let's not do this tonight." So I didn't. But that night when she fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling for hours, my mind playing back every word, every movement, every half second of hesitation. The next few days were strange. Jake didn't text me at all. Not even the usual memes or sarcastic complaints about the new project lead. I saw him once in the office hallway. He looked startled, like a kid caught stealing from the cookie jar. "Hey," I said, nodding. "Hey," he mumbled, barely meeting my eyes before walking past. Something was definitely wrong. That weekend, we had people over. Board game night, a tradition among our friend group. Jake showed up late. Rosie lit up the moment he walked in, and for a brief second, I saw something in her eyes. Like a flicker of excitement, she tried to bury beneath a smile meant for everyone. They sat next to each other during the first game. Nothing scandalous, no touching, but their shoulders were closer than necessary. When she laughed at something he said, something that wasn't even funny, she tilted her head just slightly, her hair brushing his arm. I watched it all in silence. Later that night, after everyone left, I asked her, "Do you have feelings for him?" She blinked. "What? No, Tom, what the hell?" "I saw how you looked at him. Are you seriously accusing me of something because I laughed at a joke? I'm accusing you of acting different, of spending more time with him than with your own husband, of defending him every time I bring up how off he's been." She stared at me for a moment, then turned away. "I'm going to bed." She didn't touch me that night, didn't reach for me, didn't say goodnight. The next day she made pancakes like nothing had happened, as if arguing about her possible emotional affair with my best friend was just a Tuesday night discussion. I went to work feeling like my chest was full of concrete. That week I began paying more attention to the way her phone never left her side, how she'd smile at a text, then immediately lock the screen, how she said she had yoga on Wednesdays, but always came back with perfect makeup and a different scent. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, suspicious husband. But something wasn't right. One Friday evening, Rosie told me she was going out with a few girls from the office. I smiled and nodded. But after she left, I drove downtown, parked across from the bar she mentioned. She wasn't there. I waited 30 minutes. Then I drove around the corner to a spot Jake used to like, a quiet lounge with dim lights and a killer whiskey menu. And there they were, Rosie and Jake, sitting in a booth, her hand resting on his forearm, leaning in close, smiling like teenagers. She touched her hair, tilted her head, laughed softly. And Jake? He looked at her like he'd been waiting his whole life to sit across from her like that. I didn't go inside, I didn't cause a scene. I just watched. And then I drove home in silence, my hands shaking the whole way. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the salt and pepper shakers, replaying the image of Rosie touching Jake's arm over and over in my mind. It felt surreal, like I'd watched a scene from a movie, except the characters were my wife and my best friend. By the time Rosie came home, the sun was already rising. She walked in quietly, expecting me to be asleep. She didn't see me in the kitchen until she turned to grab a glass of water. "Oh," she said, startled. "You scared me." I didn't respond. She hesitated. "You're up early." "I never went to bed." Her eyes flicked toward the table. "Did something happen?" I motioned toward the chair across from me. "Sit." She blinked. "Tom, sit down, Rosie." Something in my voice must have registered because she sat. "I know you weren't with coworkers last night," I said. "I saw you at that little whiskey lounge on Ninth with Jake." Her face froze, just for a split second. Then she tried to smile, but it was brittle, cracking at the edges. "I ran into him. It wasn't planned." "Don't lie." "I'm not." "Rosie, you were holding his arm." Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. "You laughed like you were in love," I added, voice barely a whisper. She stared at the table. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" She looked up slowly, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt. It was grief. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "Jake and we didn't plan it. We didn't set out to hurt you." I stood. "You just accidentally fell into each other's arms? Is that it?" "No." She stood too, stepping toward me. "It started after Clarissa left. He was broken. I was trying to be there for him. You were so busy at work, so distracted all the time. Jake and I started talking more. At first it was harmless. I thought I was helping." "Helping," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Right. It wasn't physical at first," she continued. "But we connected. On this weird emotional level. I didn't realize how deep it got until it was too late." "Too late for what?" She paused. "For stopping it." I stared at her. "So it is physical now?" She looked down. "Yes." Silence, just the sound of the fridge humming behind me. My throat felt like sandpaper. How long?" She didn't answer. "How long?" I repeated, voice shaking. 3 months, she whispered. I stepped back like I'd been punched. 3 months. 3 months of her lying, sneaking around, pretending, kissing me goodnight and then texting him, cooking breakfast while he sat in my spot at work, laughing at some inside joke they shared. "I gave you everything," I said quietly. "I trusted you." "I know," she said, crying now. "I'm sorry, I didn't want to hurt you. But Jake and there's something there. Something I didn't expect." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Well, I hope it was worth it." She sobbed. "I still love you, Tom. A part of me always will." "Then why wasn't that part enough to stop you?" She couldn't answer. I left the house that afternoon, took nothing but a backpack and my car keys, drove for hours with no destination. Ended up sleeping in a motel 2 towns over, the kind with stained carpets and buzzing lights. But at least the silence was honest. The next day I called a divorce lawyer. I didn't answer Rosie's texts. I didn't respond when Jake called 3 times in a row. I blocked them both within 48 hours, but I still had to see them. A week later, Jake showed up at my office. He waited by the elevator until I came back from lunch. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked thinner. His eyes had bags under them. He had the nerve to smile. "Hey, man." I didn't respond. He took a step closer. "Can we talk, please?" "About what?" I want to explain. What could you possibly say that would undo what you did?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, hands out like a peace offering. "Rosie and look, it just, stop." I raised a hand. "You did mean for it to happen. Every text you sent, every drink, every time you sat across from me pretending nothing was going on. You chose this, again and again." His mouth opened, then closed. "You could have walked away," I continued. "You could have told me. You could have respected me. But you decided screwing your best friend's wife was more important." "I didn't want to lose you," he said quietly. "But you did." He looked like he might cry. I didn't care. "Get out of my face," and I said, "before I forget how much jail time I'm willing to risk." He left. After that, I cleaned house, figuratively and literally. I moved into a small apartment across town, canceled mutual plans with friends who still talked to either of them, deleted old photos, changed my number. My world went from full to silent in a matter of weeks. I kept thinking it would get easier, but the silence was loud. I found myself missing things I didn't expect. Not Rosie, not Jake, but the comfort, the routines, the sense of safety, the false belief that I was loved and respected, the warmth that comes from thinking the people closest to you have your back. It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was realizing how long it had been going on without me knowing. How blind I'd been. How many moments they must have shared behind my back. Laughing, touching, whispering, and how I smiled at them both through it all, thinking we were still a team. The weeks after I moved out felt like walking through molasses. Everything moved, but too slowly, and nothing felt real. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, and wonder how I had gotten here. From building a life with someone I thought was my forever, to eating cold takeout alone in a half-furnished apartment that smelled like cardboard and new paint. The first time I tried to make breakfast, I burned the eggs. I just stood there watching them blacken, pan sizzling, until the smoke alarm went off. I didn't even flinch. I used to love mornings with Rosie, making coffee while she read the news on her phone, stealing kisses over the counter. Now mornings were just quiet, and not the peaceful kind. I stopped going to the gym, stopped answering messages. My group chat with close friends went untouched for days, then weeks. Only one person, Ryan, my old college roommate, kept checking in. "Bro, you alive?" he texted one Thursday. Barely, I typed, then deleted it. I sent, "Yeah." He called. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "I'm coming over," he said. "You sound like a ghost." He showed up an hour later with 2 bags of groceries and a 6-pack. He looked around my place and whistled. "Dude, this is depressing." "Thanks," I muttered. He handed me a frozen pizza. "Start with dinner, then we'll talk." That night was the first time I laughed in what felt like forever. He told me dumb stories, reminded me of the time we tried to grill steaks on a toaster, brought up old high school crushes, and finally said, "You know you didn't deserve this, right?" I didn't answer. He leaned back. "Say it out loud." I shook my head. "You didn't cheat. You didn't lie. You were loyal. You were present. You gave her everything. She still chose someone else. That's not on you." I blinked hard, staring at the floor. He kept talking. "You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to be mad. But don't blame yourself for their betrayal." I didn't say anything, but I listened. That conversation planted something. It didn't fix everything, but it cracked the wall I'd built around my hurt. I started seeing a therapist the following week. Her name was Camilla. Early 40s, calm voice, no-nonsense attitude. During the first session, I barely spoke. Just told her the basic facts. "Your wife had an affair with your best friend?" she asked. "Yeah." "And you found out how?" "I saw them, then she confessed." Camilla nodded slowly. "And now?" "I don't know who I am anymore." That's what it felt like. Like I had lost not just a marriage and a friend, but also a version of myself I could no longer find. The man who believed in love, in loyalty, in safe spaces. Betrayal, Camilla said, is a form of identity theft. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks the mirror you saw yourself in. I kept going back, week after week. Some days I sat in silence. Other days I ranted for the full hour. I talked about Rosie's laugh, how it still echoed in my head. I talked about Jake's betrayal, how it wasn't just the affair, it was the fact that he never even apologized like a man. I talked about how I missed being loved, even if it was a lie. Camilla taught me to sit with my emotions, to name them, to feel them without letting them define me. At night, I started writing in a notebook. Nothing fancy, just lines like, "Today I didn't cry," or "I made my own dinner and it didn't suck." Small victories. I avoided dating. Couldn't imagine trusting anyone again. Just the thought of someone else's hand in mine made me nauseous. The idea of opening up, being vulnerable again? Unthinkable. But time moved, even when I didn't want it to. Seasons changed. My apartment started to feel more like home. I bought new dishes, hung up some art, got a plant. It died in 3 weeks, but I got another one. The second one lived. I started going on walks in the evening. At first, just around the block, then to the park, then longer trails. I'd listen to music, mostly instrumentals, things that didn't carry memories. One day, I sat on a bench and watched kids play soccer, and I didn't feel like a broken shell of a man. I just felt quiet. That's when I met Ella. She was walking her dog, a golden retriever named Max, who bounded up to me like I owed him rent. I laughed as he tried to climb into my lap. "Sorry," she called. "He thinks everyone's his best friend." I looked up. She had soft brown eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun, and the kind of smile that didn't try too hard. I said, "He's very convincing." We chatted for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. She wasn't pushy, wasn't flirty, just real, calm, easy to talk to. I saw her again the next week, then the week after that. Eventually we got coffee, then lunch. Then we started walking together. Nothing romantic at first, just two people with pasts and dogs and silence. She told me she'd gone through a rough divorce too. Not because of infidelity, but because of distance, disconnection, slow death by routine. She said she spent a year trying to forgive herself for not being able to save it. We bonded over grief, over survival, over healing. One night, sitting on a park bench watching the sky darken, she turned to me and said, "Do you think people like us can love again? Or do we just learn to live around the hole?" I thought for a long moment. Then I said, "Maybe it's not about filling the hole. Maybe it's about building something new around it." She nodded. "That's a beautiful answer." I smiled. "It's not mine. My therapist said it, but I'll take credit if it gets me another coffee date." She laughed. "Deal." Time didn't heal everything, but it made space for healing to begin. I still had bad days. Still woke up sometimes expecting to hear Rosie humming in the kitchen. Still caught myself reaching for my phone to text Jake after watching a dumb sci-fi movie. Old habits don't die. They fade slowly, stubbornly. But life kept nudging me forward. Ella and I never rushed. We gave each other space to be broken, to be uncertain, to ask questions like, "Are we doing this too soon?" Or, "Do you still think about them?" And we answered honestly. We talked about everything. The nights we spent crying alone, the rage we didn't know where to put, the guilt of wondering if we'd missed signs or caused it. With her, I never had to pretend to be okay. And in turn, she never judged me for my scars. One night, almost a year after I'd walked out of that house for the last time, I ran into Rosie. It was at a bookstore of all places. I was browsing the new fiction section when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned and there she was, looking almost exactly the same, but somehow older. Not in years, but in weight. Like life had added something heavy to her. "Tom," she said, almost breathless. I nodded. "Hey." There was a pause. "You look good," she said. "So do you." We stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by strangers flipping pages. "I heard you moved," she said. "New apartment?" "Yeah, East Side." "And how are you?" "I'm okay." She smiled faintly. "Good." Another pause. I waited, but she didn't say it. No apology, no explanation, no remorse. I realized then I didn't need it. "I have to get going," I said, stepping back. "Of course," she said quickly. "It was good to see you." "Take care, Rosie." I walked away without looking back. In the car, I sat for a moment, letting my hands rest on the wheel. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. Later that night, I told Ella about it. "Did it feel weird?" she asked. "No," I said. "It felt finished." She took my hand. We didn't talk about it again. Months passed. Seasons turned. One evening, Ella and I sat at the edge of a cliff overlooking a quiet lake, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine from paper cups. The stars were clear, and the moon looked close enough to touch. "I used to think betrayal was the end of my story," I told her. "Now I think it was just the end of a chapter." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "And what's this chapter called?" I smiled. "Rebuilding." She kissed my cheek. "It suits you." I looked out over the water. My heart didn't ache. My chest didn't feel hollow. I wasn't weighed down by questions or rage or grief. Just gratitude for the pain that shaped me, for the people who left, and for the ones who stayed. And somewhere deep in that quiet, I forgave them. Not for them, but for me. Because carrying hate is like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies. And I was done drinking poison. Now I wake up next to someone who knows all my cracks and calls them character. I come home to laughter that feels real. I look in the mirror and don't see a broken man. I see someone who rebuilt himself from rubble, piece by honest piece. So if you're listening to this and your world is falling apart, if you feel like you'll never trust again, like the pain will never leave, please believe me when I say it gets better. You get better. It's slow, it's messy, but it's possible. One deep breath at a time, one painful truth at a time, one brave step forward until one day you look up and realize you've made it out. And you're stronger than you've ever been. If this story spoke to you, tell us in the comments. What would you have done in Tom's shoes? Do you believe people like Jake and Rosie deserve forgiveness or karma? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who might need it today. This has been True Betrayal Stories, where the truth hurts but healing is real. See you in a next soon.